Hello, my name is Bill Hemphill, and among other things, I'm a retired Air Force Major, hence Major Bill. In the military, we send our new recruits through basic training, or boot camp, to give them some basic understanding and indoctrination before sending them on to specialty schools. The purpose of this and the other 4 presentations is to give you the basics, not to make you experts. Rather, these presentations are designed to give you a glimpse into the world of government contracting and the adversarial nature of this world. Quite frankly, after over 2 decades of dealing with the federal government, I still find myself surprised by some of the things that they come up with. Contract administration is a situational discipline, and a great deal of the regulations' interpretation is dependent upon a firm's ownership, product or services, market, path to market, and a number of other variables. So what you will get in these 5 chapters is a 35,000-foot view of this world. If you have company-specific questions, please feel free to contact me directly. While the 5 presentations were developed in sequence and build upon the prior training, they can be viewed out of sequence if you wish. Here you can see some of my bona fides and a rationale for why you might want to spend your valuable time finishing this presentation. While you're looking this over, let me give you a mission statement for contract administration that applies to all business types, locations, or sizes. Our function is to mitigate risk for the firm while expanding business, and towards that end, we can never stop learning, reading, and thinking about federal procurement. Now on to the next slide. Let's start with a basic description of 3 major differences between commercial and government contracting. And by the way, whenever you see the word government capitalized, it refers to the federal government. Government contracting is more highly regulated, has the contract as the end of negotiation, and presumes that the contractor is totally knowledgeable of all the terms to which they have agreed. Now let's examine this last statement more closely. If you receive a solicitation with 5 pages of Federal Acquisition Regulation or FAR clauses included by reference and submit a proposal without any exceptions, the government will presume an award can be made without any further discussion, and that you can be held accountable for all of the terms. This is why every firm, large or small, needs to have access to a contract professional on staff, through outside legal counsel, or a consultant to mitigate the risk of not being able to perform to the government's expectation and getting penalized as a result. The basic cornerstone of all federal government procurement is the previously mentioned Federal Acquisition Regulations, or FAR. Before the FAR was issued, we existed in a very inefficient world, with each agency having its own unique procurement regulations. For example, DoD had the Defense Acquisition Regulations, or DAR. The Military Services had the Armed Services Procurement Regulations, or ASPR, with special appendices for each service, Army, Navy, and Air Force. NASA had the National Aeronautics and Space Procurement Regulations, or the NASPRs, and so forth. This meant that each contracts administrator had to be an expert in one set of regulations, because each was different in structure and content. Now, even though there are agency-specific FAR supplements, they follow the same structure as the FAR and cross-reference to it, bringing greater efficiency to the effort of contracts management. Typically, what one would see in the previously referenced solicitation with 5 pages of FAR clauses would be references to the directive clauses. These are the ones from FAR 52 or the supplement equivalent, which tell the contractor what or how the government wants the job performed, reported, subcontracted, etc. These directive clauses are selected based upon prescriptive clauses, which take into account type of contract, duration, dollar amount, job site location, material or services being procured, or end user. The prescriptive clauses are located in the other 51 parts of the FAR. Also co-located with the prescriptive clauses are the descriptive clauses that describe for the contracting officer why this directive is deemed necessary, what laws or events mandated it. This last statement leads us to an important lesson to remember. FAR and supplements are the operator's manual for the government, not for the contractors. And the government procurement personnel spend a lot of time in class and individual study of the regulations. It is, in a word, their Bible. To illustrate how these types of clauses fit together and can be referenced, let's examine a specific situation. If you were to look up FAR 52.219-9, titled Small Business Subcontracting Plan, right after the title line you would see a reference to FAR 19.704B cited. This is the prescriptive clause, and if you go to FAR Part 19 and look it up, you can see what the criteria is for selecting FAR 52.219-19. The paramount criteria is an anticipated contract value over $650,000. The rest of FAR Subpart 19.7 deals with definitions, legal bases, and rationale for requiring a small business subcontracting plan. Here is an extract of what I'm referring to from FARSite, an online FAR research tool. The same format would be seen in any electronic or printed FAR. As I mentioned, you can see the reference to FAR 19.708B as the prescriptive clause. On this slide, we introduce some of the government players with whom you might come into contact if your firm is the prime contractor. As you look over this slide, let me stress one thing. Only the contracting officer, or KO, is authorized to commit the federal government contractually. The FAR states that this must be in writing. The implication for the initial contract is obvious. Not so obvious are changes or modifications made in the middle of the performance phase of the effort. For example, if the contracting officer's technical representative, or COTR, verbally tells you, operations manager, that he wants the material painted purple rather than green as proposed, do not act on this verbal direction. It is not an official modification to the contract. If the COTR convinces the KO to make the change, you, the contractor, will have the opportunity to examine the request and determine if it impacts cost or schedule. If it does impact cost or schedule, you can propose that to the KO to be included in the contract modification. If you had acted solely on the COTR's direction, you might not recover any cost increase and might have been penalized for any resulting schedule slippage. If your firm is the prime contractor, that is, dealing directly with the federal or quasi-federal entity, you will be dealing directly with a contracting officer and his or her staff, so it would be helpful to know general characteristics of this group. Since before the advent of the FAR, KOs have been very conservative and combative with contractors. They have used what the government pays its personnel as a yardstick for gauging contractor proposals, and as a result, they have always felt that we have been overcharging the government for goods and services. This is especially true when it comes to discussions or negotiations of profit. Today we are in a very uncomfortable situation, as the government has not backfilled middle-level managers in the KO career field for decades. Now these very senior KOs that remain are retiring en masse and are being replaced by quickly trained, practically inexperienced personnel. KOs are awarded warrants by the government that are reflective of their knowledge and experience and are benchmarked by dollar values that the individual KO can procure. In the past, it took 15 to 20 years to achieve an unlimited warrant. Today, there are KOs with an unlimited warrant and only 5 years of experience, so all they know is what they've learned in class. Here you see a summary of what I've discussed. Please take a few moments to read through the slide. You will find that the government contracting is loaded with acronyms, and here are the ones we covered today, either on the slides or in the narrative. I strongly recommend that you jot these down, as you might have need of them in the future. The more knowledgeable you appear to the government, the more credibility you will have, and the less likely that they will force their contract desires on your firm. Finally, here's how you can reach me if you have any questions or need additional support. Thank you for your attention. Have a great day, and please look over the remaining 4 chapters.